Okay, for the first hands-on part of this training, you will need BI4Dynamics application. So now we'll just go briefly through, or not briefly, we'll do it quite extensively. So this is a training, so you need to know what can go wrong here and will go wrong here during the customer installation. So you already have your license. Now this is, okay, to start off with license information. So we have two ways of authenticating. One is online authentication. This is the one that we'll use, and that's pretty simple. You'll copy and paste the whole license that you got in the meeting chat, and you'll paste it in the first box. Okay, so this is the online authentication, which connects to our licensing server and returns license information. The second part is offline authentication. Now, this happens when a customer has a tight security on their servers which do not allow internet access. So for this case, we generate a license file and we import it from here. Important thing to remember here is that this generates server ID, the server ID here. So you might be asking what this is. So this is exactly what it says. It's a server ID. So we know the license file that is being used on that particular server is only used on that server. So that's why we hard code this server ID. So this is a generated string generated from hardware components on the customer server. We hard code that into the license file, which we then import. Okay. So, so that's that for now. We can talk about this a bit later when we go into more depth. But for now, let's everybody copy and paste the license key into the first window. Once we have that, we'll only press next. Okay, so this is the second screen that you will come on. Also on the left side, you will notice that we have a instance wizard, so-called instance wizard, that will guide our customers or partners, whoever is doing the installation, through the instance creation. So the first one was, of course, license information. The second one is creating a new instance. Now, right off the bat, is everybody here? So if anybody has a problem with anything, just let me know, okay, so I can stop the presentation and help you. Otherwise, we'll just continue. Okay, so this is a new instance window. The first checkbox that is here is really important one, which is the source of the Navision, or BC is cloud. So this is the BC, so software as a service, okay, BC in cloud. If we check this, the installation becomes a little bit more complicated. So for the first session, we'll just use a source which is on-premise. So Navision, which is on-premise, also BC versions can also be on-premise, and we'll use that. Now, the instance name will be filled out automatically. This is BI4Dynamics BC. This is the default name. We tend to use this a lot. So customer can change this if necessary. Majority of the cases when this is changed is when a customer wants a development instance and a production instance. Then you would just go with production or dev or whatever. Now, if you notice, when I change the name, the names for both databases that we create has also changed. Okay, we create the SQL database, so the database engine, and analysis, so a database on analysis services. Okay, in theory, this could be different, but we'd like to keep it the same so we know exactly to which instance does it belong to. Okay, so for now, we'll just keep it as at BI4Dynamics BC, the standard name. The language will be English for now, and we'll talk about translations a bit later in the training process. Okay, so the server name. So this is the server where our data warehouse will be deployed. Now this is my local server. I already connected to it. If you don't have your Management Studio open, you can open it at this point. And I'll just wait for a minute so everybody can open it. And this should be SQL 2019, of course, which is a requirement for installing BI4Dynamics. Okay. So when you enter the server name, you can also enter a full stop localhost, which will bring you directly to the to my computer. So, and then when you add an instance name, this will be filled out automatically. We know that because we have a drop-down menu, and BI4Dynamics application is reading all the SQL server that are currently in the network. Now we have a lot for the customer. This will be 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, not a lot. But you always use the local one. One important thing to remember here, BI4Dynamics application will always be installed on the same server where the data warehouse is residing. So on the same server. Okay. So this is the SQL Server name. Now the authentication, when we say Windows, we mean the user that we are currently using to log into the computer. At this point, if I go to our web page, okay, I'll just do this, and if I go under Resources, you'll see a bunch of options here. So BC Cloud, BC and Navision documents, this is AX, but we'll use the BC and Navision on-premise documents for now. You'll also get a hang of this a little bit later on our website. We'll guide you through it as well. So under Installation Resources, you will see System Requirements and Installation Manual. Everything that we'll do today is also written in the installation manual. Okay. But the thing we are going to look at the moment is system requirements. So this is absolutely vital to the customer to understand before they install BI4Dynamics and before they actually create an instance. If I'll just go through this quickly. Now, I was talking about authentications, right? The SQL, okay, the Windows users and everything. So if I just go into the first chapter of the installation requirements, it says permissions. Okay, here we talk about the users. We do recommend the customer to create a dedicated BI user, which we will use to log into the server, and which will also have permissions to, it will have, of course, local administrator permission. It will have permissions to the BC database. Okay, we only need to read permissions to that. And it will also need to be administrator on the local SQL server, okay, and on the local analysis service. Okay, this is absolutely a must before you actually create an instance. You need to check that. Okay, like I said, permissions on the SQL server and permissions on the analysis services. Now there is one additional step to this. SQL agent job service, user accounts needs all of the above stated permissions. So we have 5 permissions to follow, and the SQL agent job is a separate service that is running under services. Okay. And when you run that SQL server agent, I'll just go here briefly, server agent, okay, this one. This user that is running the SQL Server agent needs to have all the permissions that are stated here. Now, as I've talked before, we can join all the permissions under one Windows domain account, then we can also run the SQL Server agent service as the same account. Okay, so permissions absolutely vital to the installation. Okay, we'll come to that a little bit later. Okay, permissions, Windows, we also offer SQL Server, but we'll go through that a little bit later. Let's keep it simple. Windows, okay. the user that we're logged in at the moment. You cannot change the Windows user here. You cannot use a different one, but you need to be logged in into the server with the user you're going to be using. Okay, if we switch over to analysis services, now the analysis database name is the same. Analysis server name is the same as I had before. So this is Matei/BC instance. Okay. You will probably have something similar, or if it's just the default instance, you'll have it without BC. Okay, authentication, again, Windows. Now we do offer other options to deploy analysis database on Azure. Then you will use a different authentication, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Analysis service option will be tabular. We still offer multidimensional, but 99% tabular will be used. If a customer has a really specific case, we will still use multidimensional, but any new customers from now on will be using tabular. Import mode, we have two import types here, mode types, sorry. One is import and other is direct query. We will leave this at import. Okay. Now, when you set everything up on the server name, there is a button here which says refresh. Okay, it didn't do much for me because I already have everything set up here. But if I will delete the data and log file locations and use a different, let's say, collation, I'll just show you what I'm doing here is just showing you what the refresh button does. Okay, I'll just choose a different one. Doesn't really matter. Okay, when I press refresh, this will return the properties of the default data and log files and the default collation of the data of the database server. Okay, so when you assign a different server, okay, let's say this, and if I click refresh, this will change as well. Okay, going back to BC, okay, and it gets the data and log location back. You can change this. So this is for me on C drive, which is the default installation path for SQL Server. Now for the customer environment, they will probably have a separate disk for data. So on the C, they will have system. On D, they will have data. So if they were not careful during the installation of SQL Server, if they didn't set the default path to D drive, then the whole database will go to the C drive, and you'll have to be careful to change that to D drive. So before you actually do the installation, because you cannot change this later on, you'll have to go back to create another instance. You have to be careful where you will have your data, on the C drive or on the D drive, or anything else a customer might have. The collation, we like to use the case sensitive, accent sensitive, and the collation, this is Latin 1 general, this is as general as it can be. A customer will have a different collation maybe on the server, but important thing is you always use case sensitive, accent sensitive. Now the last part of it is integration services. This is an absolutely vital part of the installation. And when you press on this, it should show up that it is connected. Okay. So this is the end. I'll talk a bit about integration services and why do we use it later on.
Do you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I just wanted to ask, what was that last thing and under SQL database collation when you said case sensitive, and what was AS?
CSAS, accent sensitive.
What does that mean?
Accent sensitive means that if you have a letter with different, you have many languages, of course, right? In German, you have umlaut or whatever. So this will effectively, in the SQL database, it will recognize that it is sensitive to that case as well. So this is a little bit of, a question that will maybe answer a little bit later. but I cannot get the umlauts going right here. Sorry, let me try. Yeah, okay. So this is the special characters that will be taken into account when we create a data warehouse. Now, accent sensitive. For now, just remember you have to choose case sensitive, accent sensitive. That's it. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay. Did everybody manage to create their own settings and use the integration services? Okay,
Hey,
I guess.
Matej, this is Saurabh here.
Yep.
Just a quick question. So this integration services is optional, right?
It is kind of optional. We don't like to think of it as optional. It is a requirement, but the BI4Dynamics will run without it as well. But there is a huge downside to it. When we'll talk a little bit about this later on in the training. For now, you have to think about it as a obligatory. So it is okay. You know, in short, it's absolutely necessary. Otherwise, the processing of the data will just take too long. How does the technology works here? I'll explain a little bit later. Okay.
Sure, no problem.
Sorry, Matej, do I use the SQL server yours or?
No, not mine. Yours.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Okay. Any more questions here? Mladen, do you need to add anything at this point? Did we forget anything? Okay, I think we're fine here. If there's no more question, let's go next. So when we're creating a new instance, now a proper question from a customer, especially with the ones with the technical background with SQL Server, will be, oh, wait, new instance. That's also could be a SQL instance, right? Because a SQL instance, it has a similar name. So we're not creating a new SQL instance at this point. This is a BI4Dynamics instance. It will not create anything on the SQL. It will just use the same name. But what we think of an instance, it's basically just a folder in the two databases that we're going to create. So if I go here, now I have some other instances going on here, but no BI4Dynamics BC. So when I click next here, okay, and you can do that as well, you'll find that a new folder is created in Program Files BI4Dynamics installation folder. Okay, it will already contain some other folders and files, but we'll get to that a bit later. Okay, so the third step to BI4Dynamics installation is to add the data source. Now, the same thing as you had with SQL Server before, you have a drop-down menu. If you press on that button, your computer should probably find the local instance. If it doesn't find it, you can always write it in like you did the first time. Okay, but you will need a Navision data source. Now, for majority of guys here at BI4Dynamics, I think you'll have access to SQL 2017. Okay, so we'll use that one. Set up, and Rakesh, I'm not sure if you have a demo database available of Navision.
Yeah, I don't
think
have. I have. It's showing Rakesh PC. That's it.
Okay, and you have a BC database available, a demo one?
PC, no. No, I cannot find one.
Are you already connected to BI4Dynamics VPN?
Yeah, I'm connected to VPN.
Okay, can you also use this server? Try to use this server and see if you have permissions. SQL 2017.
I cannot find that option itself. Like
you can, if you cannot find it in the drop-down menu, you can just write it in. and see if it
Just a minute.
connects.
SQL 2017. Okay.
If you have a VPN enabled. I'm not sure if you already have permissions to that server or not, but we can try.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Surab,
Now.
Surab, you have a database, right?
Yeah, I have a demo database, so I think I should be able to use that.
Okay, perfect. Which version is it?
I think it's version 13.
BC version 13.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. That's a little bit on the low side, but yeah, it should work nonetheless. It's good that you have a different version here.
But I don't have. Okay.
Okay,
There are demo database. Yeah.
Rakesh, have you managed to connect to this?
I've connected to SQL 2017. Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, when you open a drop-down menu, okay, we'll just use the latest one we have, demo database 2017. Now I'll use this for a smooth transition. So you can choose another if you like, any of you. So you can choose which one you have here. You can use 16 maybe or 11. So this is Navision 2018. Okay, but I'll use 17. Okay, this is BC 17. Once you have selected the database, we're again at authentication. Now, Windows authentication, the same thing as before at creating the instance. This is the user that you're logged in and opening BI4Dynamics with. We do have another option, which is a viable option for the customers that doesn't allow user connection to the Navision database. They can have a SQL authentication here as well. Okay, username and password, and this should work. Okay, both options are equally possible here. Windows authentication is used more, but using a SQL Server authentication is not uncommon in any way. Okay, so this is the important part. You have to choose the correct data source version. Based on that, in our application, we do a lot of things a little bit differently. They're essentially the same, but each Navision version has its own set of rules, or maybe the table structure is different, and so on. So we can talk about differences a little bit later as well, but it's absolutely essential that you select the correct version. For me, that will be BC 17. If you have selected database of a different version, you have to select the different version here. Okay, when you have that done, you can test the connection. So it should say test connection succeeded. Okay. So this is essentially the same as you would use a management studio and connect to the server. I'll just connect again. Okay. And if you're able to see the database, and if you are able to see the tables and actually query the tables, that means that you do have permissions to that database. Now, if I just try to select, okay, I have an empty table here, but doesn't matter. I don't get any errors, so it means I do have permissions to that database. You can also check that beforehand with the customer, right? Like I said before, you need to be able to connect to the server where you'll be deploying data warehouse, connect to analysis database, and connect to the SQL server where the Navision database is.
Actually, I'm getting an error.
Okay. What kind of error do you get? At which step? Connecting the...
While testing connection, I got an error 245 because of an error in initializing provider.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you probably have some issues with VPN, or you don't have a full permissions to that database. Okay. Okay, so what can you try here? Yeah, you don't have any other databases? Okay, let me try something while we're here. Permissions is, like I said, important to the installation, and it's usually, you know, the 90% of the work before we actually do the installation is the permissions. So that's not something that is uncommon. You will have customers that say, okay, we have checked the system requirements, and we have set up a user with all the permission. Then you will come to the customer, you will open Management Studio and see not all the permissions are in place. Okay, the security here, let me try to add you if I can find you.
Okay.
And then we'll see. Okay, I'm not sure what your username is. Okay, you're already here. Good. Okay, good. And I'll give you a admin access to this server.
Okay.
Also, you know, you should be able to connect it, but let me just do this. Database 2017. Okay. Okay, let's try again.
Okay.
So you should be able to test the connection. Set up. Were you successful in the connection?
Yeah, now it's working.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I was.
Okay, perfect. Everybody else has any problem with that? Everybody has permissions to the database?
Yeah, I actually got a question. So as I mentioned previously, my computer doesn't allow me to open the BI4 Dynamics, but it's settled. But it actually allows me to open the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So I was wondering if I should use it at this step, or it's not really relevant without the BI4 Dynamics itself.
No, it's not really relevant because, you know, if I roll back a little bit, we built everything on top of SQL Server, right? All the functions. You can think of BI4Dynamics as just a really nice application that uses and utilizes the functions of the SQL Server. So we'll do everything through BI4Dynamics, but the consequences of what we'll do in BI4Dynamics will be shown in SQL Server, of course, in forms of databases and stored procedures and everything else. So Alex, for now, I don't think, you know, we had problems with your computer, so I think you can just follow the presentation, and I don't think you'll be able to do this by yourself. But once we get your computer up and running, you can use this video to recreate the instance. Okay?
I see. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, if everybody test succeeded, now we have some other options here. Double byte characters, that's not commonly used, and it's not used at all actually. This one is used multi-tenant mode, but we'll touch that a little bit later. It's not standard. It is standard Navision, but it's a multi-tenant mode that it's not often used. And Azure data source mean that this server is within, so it's Azure, so it's not on premise, but the database is hosted somewhere, meaning that the database itself, like a form of Navision or BC, it is still on premise, but the server which it is located on is somewhere in the cloud. But the Navision or BC installation is still on premise. It's not software as a service like we have seen before on the previous step, okay? So it's still on premise, but on a server hosted in Azure. So if you have that, you have to click this one. The application does all the rest. It has some implication on how we actually create link server on SQL Management Studio, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, and those are the options. That's pretty simple here, pretty straightforward. And if everybody's test was successful, we can just click Add. So at this point, we are reading the data source. And when I say read, we're not talking about data here, but we're talking about a structure. So the tables, maybe the license key. I just remember. So Saurabh, you might have problems with. You might hit an error here because the license that you used on BC or Navision has not been yet put into our license, BI4Dynamics license. So just tell me if you have error here.
Actually, I was successful. So it
You were
actually
successful.
added the data.
Okay, so you're probably
Yeah,
using
yeah.
a demo database which is using the license from Microsoft. I'm just guessing here. So
Yeah, I am not sure. I just downloaded it. I think Mladen had sent me. I downloaded it and
oh, that's
just
fine. So
installed it.
if Mladen sent it to you, the license is probably already within the database. So that's okay.
Okay.
Good. So this is the result. You will see a data source added here. Now for everybody, it might be of a different color. We have a set of about 20 random colors that is assigned to this database. And why is that important? We'll see a little bit later on. Okay, good. Everybody else had any issues with this?
For me, it's still loading.
Still loading? Okay. So for me, it was quick because I'm on the same network. For you, you're on the VPN connecting from excuse me, India, and it will probably take a little bit more time. Again, at this point, we're reading the structures, and if internet connection is a little bit slow, then this could take a little while. So we'll just wait for a minute. Okay, I'm assuming no. Like I said, this is pretty straightforward, so you shouldn't have any issues here. Again, we're talking the permissions, what we need from customer database as opposed to what we have, what we need from the customers as opposed to what we have on local SQL, where we will deploy SQL database, data warehouse, BI4Dynamics data warehouse. We need admin access here. As opposed to that, on the Navision side of it, we only need read permissions on the database. Now, I already talked about this in the system requirements. If I go back, so we need read permissions on BC database. So no admin permissions required here. We will only read it.
Yep, mine's done.
Okay, perfect. What color do you have? Probably red, right? Or something like that.
It's brown.
It's brown. Okay, like I said, a list of random colors. So why are colors important here? Now, in BI4Dynamics, we don't only have an option to add one database, but I'll use two databases in my case. But you can follow up. You can just leave one for now. What I'll do is, of course, we allow multiple databases. Either a customer has more live databases for different companies, or a company has has bought many different companies which each own their user Navision. They can join everything under one data warehouse. So that's one example. Another example would be if a customer would have an older Navision version, then they're upgrading to BC. They would be able to add an archive database here and a new database as well. So they will have continuous flow of data from when they start the business up until now. Okay, I'll add, just for example, I'll add a different source here, BC16. I'll test the connection again and click add, and this will come up under a different color. Okay. This will be done any second, and hopefully everybody is already on this step. So when this is added, we'll just continue. Yeah, like I said, we can add more data sources. I think the biggest one we have, not sure, but I think it's 12 or 13 databases that we have on one of the customers. They have the same Navision version, and yeah, we can add everything. There's no limit in technical terms. They just need to buy the license for it, right? It's only a sales issue. Okay. Now it takes a long time for me as well because Rakesh has stolen all the internet from me. Right? Okay.
I have one question, like silly, but you said, right, the folders were getting created. For me, I cannot find those folders actually.
Where did you install BI4Dynamics?
I installed in local disk C itself, but
Oh, it should be on the program files, 32-bit, so x86, 68. Sorry, and it should be a folder here. Okay. So the next step will be when we actually added the data source, we'll select the companies from that data source. Of course, you know, customer can have many companies in one data source. For us, it's only one because we have a demo database. So we'll just select one. Good. When we, okay, let me go like this. A customer will often do, so we will say expand the database. Expand the database and select the companies. Okay, they will press the check mark and the next button will already be enabled. It's important to remember that you have to press on the company, you have to click on the company to have additional setting to, so it will show additional settings. Now, company configuration, we get most of this configuration directly from Navision. This is something that we read before when we added the data source. So we have a Kronos International Limited company here. We can select company short name. Now, this is not a Navision thing or BC thing. This is a BI4Dynamics thing, where you can use this shortened name in the reports. So you have it. You don't have Kronos International Limited every time that you put in a company dimension, but you can have it a little bit shorter and a little bit more descriptive. Now. Because this is BC 17, I'll just rename this one BC 17. Oops, sorry. BC 17. Okay. And the customer will know that this is coming from the BC 17 database or any other name. It's just a short name. Okay. So the country, we get this from Navision. A local currency, we get this from Navision. Additional currency. Now, this is a currency that is... This is additional currency for reporting. Now, customer will ask you, what if you post invoices in different currency than British pound here? It doesn't matter. We're not talking about the same currency here, because that is posted currency. So in BI4Dynamics, we have a lot of measures. One is a base measure. So in the local currency, if we're talking about the simple measure here, let's say net sales, you will have three net sales measures. One will be in local currency, another one will be in posted currency. Okay, even if the customer's local currency is British pounds and they post something in US dollars, you will have that ability to check that by default. What we're talking about additional currency here is just additional currency for reporting. We can select any currency that is defined in Navision, okay? And they also have a exchange rate table there. And we use that exchange rate table to calculate additional measures. So the third measure for net sales would be net sales additional currency, and that will be in the currency that we have selected here. Let's say we want it in Indian rupees. Okay, we can have that as well. This is a section where we select or define global dimensions. If not everybody knows what global dimensions are in Navision, so let's say that you would have, so what would be a simple example here? So of course you have some numbers in Navision, let's say net sales, okay? And you want to analyze that number by different dimensions. One of the dimensions would be customer, okay? Then if you go on the purchase side of things, you will not have customer, but you will have vendor. okay? And those two areas are not really intervening between each other, okay? And if you want to analyze some of that data on a common dimension in the vision, you can create what's called a global dimension, okay? And a global dimension, I'll press this, is it can be anything, basically, whatever the customers decide. But let's say this is a intuitive one. It's a project. Let's say you have a project, and you want to have your sales part of documents and your purchase part of documents and your inventory documents assigned to the same project. Okay, so that's why you create those global dimensions to assign it to it. So you know you can analyze you can analyze all the documents just by having a global dimension. Okay. Or department, same story. You know, some departments are doing some invoices and some departments are purchasing something else, right? But you have to know if you have to know which department it is, you create a global dimensions, and then you know which department does it belong to, or customer group or area or business group, whatever. Okay, any questions here at this stage about global dimensions? So this is more content wise, but you know.
Yeah, so if you just want one, you have to press X on all the others to make them go away and then click add the dimensions.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So Jan is ahead of all of us. So that's good. If anybody else has some questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll just continue. What we'll do here, you can leave the A dimension, or you can just select just just a few. What I will do is have a department and project, which is left. Now, there are two parts to global dimensions. One is global dimensions that is initialized from the vision. So these are the ones that are actually defined in the vision. But it's not necessary that a customer wants every one of those dimensions in the BI project. Okay, so what you can do, as Jan suggested, you can keep all of them, or you can delete some of them if necessary. Okay, when you initialize them, you will have a name here. Now, this is a little bit specific on what we'd like to do here. When you name a global dimension, this is a you know, just a name that will appear in the reports. Okay, so not everybody will have a nice name like area or business group. They will have maybe just for a business group they will have BG. Okay, and then you go into the report and nobody really knows what this is. Okay, so when you have a customer, you'll have to ask, okay, what does BG means? And they will tell you, okay, it's business group. Okay, so then you go business group, because this is a thing that you would like to show up on the reports. Okay, so everybody will know what's happening there. So this is totally customizable. Again, these are the names that will be visible in reports. Now, we haven't done anything yet. We have just set up global dimensions, you know, how we would like them to appear. But we have to map them to the actual dimensions in the vision. Let me show you how. Okay, I'll just click through them. Okay, so this is select local dimension. So this is local dimension, means a dimension from the vision. Okay, this is the same list. Okay, and map to global dimensions. So we will have to map it to the dimensions that we have selected. Now, if this is a little bit confusing, let me do something here. Okay, I'll add a prefix of dim department, okay, and dim project. We do this for two really good reasons, maybe even three. Okay, we'll just do a prefix on all of them. Okay, like this. So now we have set a dim department. Why do we have a prefix dim before the department? Two things. The first one, so the dimensions could not be, let's say dimension salesperson. We as BI4Dynamics, we are already using a salesperson dimension on the sales module. So we have to know which salesperson is posting the invoice. So this is a standard Navision dimension, okay? Or it's a field in value entry table, so to say. When you have another dimension with the same name, well, that cannot happen, right? So we add a prefix to it, so we know exactly that it is a global dimension that we have defined it in the setup. So that's one thing. Another thing is when you'll open the report, all the fields will be listed there, and they're listed alphabetically. If we have a dim prefix in front of everything, then the global dimensions will stand together in the report. So we'll know exactly those are global dimensions, and everything else is Navision dimensions, or Navision. So dimensions coming from, different tables. Okay. Now that I have changed this part, maybe even this part makes more sense. So we have a department area, and we will map it to dim area. So in BI4Dynamics, we will take information, Navision information from a area, and we'll put it into dim area. Okay, this will become a global dimension. And it's the same for everything else as well. Is that clear? Any questions here?
Hey, hi. What happened with me? So when I clicked on the add dimension, it also added the new dimensions under that right inside initial global dimension list. So I had like duplicate entries.
Yeah, that's fine. So what you did here is probably this and this. And then when you add it, it was actually like this. Okay, dim, I'll just try to recreate it. Okay, add, yeah, okay. So when we add dimension, right? When we add dimension, we check if it was already added on the right side. Okay? And because of the name is different, because we change it to dim salesperson, right? We cannot find the salesperson dimension, so we add it here again. You can just delete it.
Yeah, okay. I think it's better to add the dimensions on the left hand side first, and then go back and rename those.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I had to start with what global dimensions mean in BI4Dynamics. So yeah, you would be absolutely correct. We can do as suggested. We can add the dimensions here. Okay, salesperson, and then rename them like you said. Okay, I'll only use 2 dimensions here, so I will not do everything. Dimension, project, okay. 2 dimensions, and the rest of them I'll just delete. And you'll see this one also becomes unselected because there is no global dimensions to map the local dimension to. Okay?
Okay.
And then I could just delete what I don't use. Okay, then department, then project, and when I click save, it says dimension saved. Good. Any other questions here? No? Good. Okay, what I'll also do is, now why is this important? If it seems redundant at first, remember a customer could have more data sources and more companies. Now let's say let's say this company would not be this company. Let me just add this. Sorry. Okay, I had department and I had project. I will select dim department and dim project, and I will deselect everything else. Okay, let's say so these are both English companies, right, from Great Britain. If a customer will have a database which is in a different country, they might not name their global dimension the same, but they would mean the same. What I mean is they would have department and then another company will be in different language, okay? Departamente or whatever, you know, in French, right? So you can join those two into one common dimension. So it will read here Departamente or something, you know, something similar, and you can join both this dimension and this dimension, which will be different, in one common dimension that we defined, DIM department. Like I said, it seems redundant doing this on one particular company, but believe me, it's absolutely necessary that we have this if a customer has a multi-country environment or more databases or more companies or whatever. Okay. You also have
you have to define these dimensions for every company that
yes.
they select.
Yes.
But the global dimensions stay defined.
Global dimensions stay
map to
defined.
them.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the global dimensions that we defined for the whole project. Okay.
Right.
This part, and this is the local dimensions that comes from a company.
I also wanted to ask about this additional currency. Does it automatically save when you select a different one, or does it save only when you click the save under global dimensions?
The save is for the global dimensions, and I will show you what I mean. Let's say we select, let's say we make an error, right? We could have 20 global dimensions here, 20 companies, and you know, when we click through them, we made a mistake and select the project twice. When we click save, it says global dimension can be mapped only once. Please delete the duplicate records, and you'll know that's a problem. Now, this save does only affects the global dimension, not what is set up in the company properties. Here, it's definitely, you know, whatever you choose to write and whatever you choose to select. So when I go to DIM department again and click save, it will say dimension saved, and that's how you know everything is okay. Now, about additional currency. This is one BI project, and you will have only one set of measures. And why would a company need an additional currency for reporting? Let's say a company from India would buy company from Slovenia and company from Canada. Okay, so the Indian company, so the Slovenian company, of course, they will have a local currency in euro. And then a Canadian company will have local currency in Canadian dollar, and then you need to, and then the mother company needs to have its reports in rupees. Okay, so you need to select or USD in this case, right? So on each company you will have to select the same additional currency. So this is really important. The same additional currency should be selected, or you know, it's a must that it is selected for all the companies. If a company is already in the US, they will already have a local currency USD. There's no need for additional currency, so you can leave this blank. But if you want to unify the reports using the additional currency, all companies needs to have the same additional currency. Now, what I'll also do here...
Isn't that kind of a thing that should be implemented already, so that you cannot actually select different currencies for different companies?
Well, that's something for you to implement, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
It's kind of an important...
I mean, if you want this, Jan, if you want to have this unified, that is, in theory, you could select a different additional currency. There's no problem with that. Technically speaking, we can, right? But then you cannot use a additional currency to compare both companies. Okay, let me do this. It's actually a really good question, so thank you, Jan. So technically speaking, we do support it. I'm talking more about what is, in the actual real world scenario here. I will get the data here from analysis services. PC. next. Let me just see what I have here. Maybe this one. Okay, hopefully I have more companies here. Okay, let's go to sales. Now we'll go through that a bit later. So if you're a bit confused, let's just wait for the results, sales values. And we have net sales, and we'll have additional currency, net sales additional currency. And what we'll also add is company. Good. Okay. So in this case, we have probably these are both UK companies. Okay, they have a different net sales, and then this additional currency is, I'm not sure what it is, but I can check that as well. Okay, let me do that. Why not? Let me go here. Sorry. Okay. Why am I going here? Because I have everything here. I have currency code as well. Okay, let me do this. This is the net sales. Okay, so this is the example what I've talked about before. Okay, a company can post in many different currencies. So this is the post currency as well, right? They can be in Czech crown or Europe or Icelandic crown or whatever, Norwegian crown, USD. But it will all translate to additional currency. Now, we can do that. We can analyze both because we have selected the same additional currency for both companies. Now, in theory, what we could do, we can select a different currency, but then this wouldn't be, this grand total will be representable because we will be adding up a currency, two different currencies in one number. So it doesn't make sense. So what you can do is filter one company here and one company here. Okay, and analyze it in each additional currency. Okay, this could be different. So this is how you can analyze it. But if you have it together, you cannot just add different currencies together. Is that clear?
That's pretty clear. Thank you.
Okay.
So it doesn't actually make sense to select different ones, but we do support it, so
exactly.
It can stay as it is. Okay.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying. But thank you for the question. It's something that you know, it's not a common question, but it's good to think about it this way as well. Okay, so we selected the companies, the additional currency here, and what I will also do here, as I have named this company BC17, I will name this company BC16. So what we'll have here in the reports, we'll have a company short name. Okay, I'll add that. Oops, sorry. Okay, the short name for this company, UK 2009, is just UK. Okay, and let me do it here as well. Okay, so it's just Kronos 2018. Okay, so you see there's a difference in using this one in every report or just this one. Okay, good. That is it. Okay, if this is set, I would propose a quick break. So we're already, we'll just make a 10 minutes break and then we'll continue. Okay. If everybody has this set up, we can just press next, and we'll talk a little bit about this when we come back. Unless there are any other questions. Good. So we're in the last part of the installation. So this is to select the modules. Now, what we're using here is a BI4Dynamics license which has all the available modules available. Okay, when you will have a customer, it will only show the modules that they have actually bought through our sales team. Because probably now we all have, since we're using the same license, everybody has the same view here, so it's not a problem. What we'll do here is click through a standard package, which contains general ledger, inventory, payables, purchase, receivables, and sales. Now for this exercise, we'll leave everything else out of it. One important...
Isn't the framework module absolutely necessary for anything to work?
Jan, you're ahead of me again. So yes, I was just about to say that.
Yeah, and I was about to ask why it's even possible to leave it out if it's absolutely necessary.
Well, because you can have, so we're talking about new customers here, but you have to remember we have a whole lot, about 1,000 existing customers when they're not using version 8, where framework did not even exist. So the new installation system was not in place. Meanwhile, the information that we get on the modules from the licensing server might not contain it. Okay, so the older customers on the older version might not even see the framework modules, but for the new customers, everybody will see framework module.
Oh, and you also have the choice between the framework Azure if it's on the cloud instance, right?
Yeah, that is something that I wanted to talk to you right now. So we selected the module. So this is kind of the content that they will have. In addition to the content modules, they would need to select one of a framework or framework Azure modules. So this is a framework that only applies to how BI4Dynamics works, and it's just a base module that we need to deploy for BI4Dynamics project to work. So this is, as much as we will go into this at this point. We'll get into that in another sessions. So you see we have two options, framework and framework Azure. If you remember correctly when I talked about Azure data sources, so BC as a service, right? If they have a BC as a service, they would have to click framework Azure. Because we're all on-premise at the moment, we will click framework, just framework, not Azure. But it can only be one. Now this is confusing because we're using a development license at the moment. So for the customer, they will only have one available, the one that they're actually using. To summarize what you'll have in the customer, what they bought, it will actually show here, and you will basically click through all the modules. Either it will be framework or framework Azure, and all the content modules that are available here. Okay, you can, of course, for your exercise, you can select any other modules as well, besides framework Azure. Only on framework you have to select just this one, not Azure. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, why is LS retail under the different column?
Well,
why
that's
is it special?
Yeah, it's special because it's not actually a module in Navision or BC. It's what it's called a vertical solutions, a vertical solution. So there's an outside vendor, which is not Microsoft, that is selling a vertical. A vertical is a solution, a BI solution, in this case for retailers, okay, for supermarkets, for stores, that would add new tables and new fields to existing Navision tables. So it's not coming directly from Microsoft. It's a vertical solution that we support.
Right. So it's not very common for companies to have that, or?
It's not. It's not common. It depends. We have a lot of LS Retail customers. So LS Retail is probably the leading vendor for the retail vertical, and it is used a lot around the world. We have a lot of customer on that as well. That's why it is integrated within BI4Dynamics in this way, because it makes the installation a lot easier. Any other vertical solutions that are out there on the market, we do the installation a bit differently, or we build the vertical on the BI project by ourselves. But this one is already integrated within the BI4Dynamics application.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, framework, the rest of the modules. If that is okay, we'll click next. Now, this is the last screen that we'll do in today's session. And we'll do something that is a little bit counterintuitive at this point. This is also written in the in the installation manual. So once again, everything that we did today is written within the installation manual. You can find it on the web page. Now, if we go down to where are we? Selecting modules. Okay. Now, it says click the last step. Please click close. Do not click run. Now, this is also Jan, because I know you'll have the same question. We need to support a dual mode of installation. So some of our customers will still have older versions, not with the scripts, right? With data warehouse automation scripts. We'll talk a little bit about this later on. But they will have a standard installation when all the scripts were integrated within the .NET application. For them, they will click run, but we'll do something different. We'll click close here. Like I said, it feels a little bit counterintuitive, and we are working on this for now.
Yeah, I can confirm that we are actually very close to implementing the installation step that will make the run step obsolete.
Okay.
But we're still waiting for Andrei for some.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
For some small things, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Jan. So we'll click close. Okay. And then we'll go into the install tab. I hope everybody can find it. And then click the installation button. Okay. If everybody is here, if everybody was able to find it. Now, this is the installation that Jan will, this is the page that we will integrate into the previous steps. And you will probably, you know, if you'll click next on the previous screen, you'll probably come to this screen directly. And all you need to do is click run. Now, before we do that, let me just quickly describe what's going on here. We have a bunch of steps that would be that will be executed. Now, of course, you know, probably a lot of you have seen this already, but Rakesh and Saurabh, and I think Alex, also Ivancho, I think you didn't see this before, or you didn't actually see how we did installation before. Everything that is automated here, we would have to do manually within, you know, within the menu up here. Don't worry about the menu for now. We'll go through them on next session. But for now, you just need to remember that everything that we automated right here, by clicking run, you had to do manually before. So when you'll have a new installation with the customer, like I said, you will go through the whole setup. You will click close, or when this is implemented, when you click next, you'll go directly to this screen and you will click run. So what does run actually do? It will, of course, it will implement the framework module. It will deploy. Now, when I say implement and deploy, they're basically the same steps, but in BI4Dynamics, the terminology is deployed. So we will deploy this framework module first. Now the framework module is a short list of dimensions and maybe some other stored procedures that we absolutely need before we move forward with the installation. Let me give you an example. A framework module generates a date dimension. Now, why date? It seems really simple, right? It's just the date dimension. A couple of dates, month, year, and that's it. But if you look at it, and we can also go here into the database. I'll check some other database that I have available. If I go on the tables, if I look at date dimension columns, you will see that there are a lot of columns here. And everything you do in BI project is based on date. Every analysis you do is based on date. So we have a lot of options here. Apart from the obvious calendar, year, months, and date, we also have weeks, quarters. In addition to that, we have accounting periods date, which is if customer is starting the year not on January 1st, but on some other months, it means that we would have to shift those dates and the reports on the analysis for the years to start with that month. So that's why we have a different fields for that. We're not changing the calendar fields, which start with C, right? But we're adding new functionality with accounting period, years and dates and weeks and quarters and months and so on. Okay, we also have some other properties over here on date, which is current month or current quarter. Let's say you have a report and you have the net sales and you only want to see the current quarter. You add this attribute and you will only see numbers for that. So the fields that I previously talked about, the month and the quarters and years, they are absolutely a must. But we also have a nice set of attributes that will calculate numbers for different properties. Same quarter last year, same month last year. So they're basically a good selling point for the customers to show them how easy it is to get the properties, different date properties. Now, I can also show you this really quickly. So if I get rid of everything here and just use the date dimension. Okay, so this is normal date hierarchy. This is year, month date. You will notice that we have year, quarter, month date, year, week date. The same will be true for the fiscal date, but then it starts with the additional information. The accounting period can be different. These are the calendar years. This is the current period, current month. So if you want to add that, to the current month, to the filters, okay, you only say, I want to have the current month. Yes. Okay, and I will probably have no data because I don't have data for the current month, okay, because this ends in January. But just an example, right, what you can do. Again, we have the fiscal date, we have the ISO calendar. So these are all ways that different customers are looking at date. Last year, previous period, and so on. More fields, and when I go under more fields, you'll have more of that as well. You can check that when you have your project ready, and we'll also go through the reports. And this is more on the content side of things. I just wanted to show you that the framework modules, the framework module is is something that we need. And why do we need that date before we do anything else? Well, we need to be able to assign different documents that have a date to a specific record in the date dimension. Okay, so every document has a date, and we need to assign that if we want to use the date dimension here. Okay, okay. So this is framework. It has a bunch of other stuff as well, but let's not go into this right now. We'll talk about the rest of the steps on tomorrow's meeting. actually all of them. But what you need to do now is just press run. When you press run, you will see that those steps were starting to execute. And that's basically it for today's session, apart from any questions that you might have at this point about the installation that we went through just now. Not the steps, because we'll go through them tomorrow, but everything what we did up to here. Okay, so no questions. I would consider that as a good sign. Saurabh, you have a question?
Yeah, so I don't know why this is happening. So when I click on run, it gives me an error that it's an SQL Server error that login failed for the user. So when I started, I tested the connection, it was working well, but now it says the login failed. So I don't know, I mean, maybe some SQL related error, but let's say I get the error. Can I go back and change it and come back?
Oh, it depends what kind of error it is. If it's error on the your local SQL, or is it error on the data where your database is?
I mean, everything is local in my case.
Everything is local in your case.
In the same SQL Server instance.
Okay. Is anybody else having problem? I don't think you should be having any problems, because we're having the database on the same in the same server.
I have an error.
You have an error, okay?
Yes. Should I read it to you?
Okay.
How does it go?
Okay. So we have 5 minutes still. So maybe Ivancho, can you share your screen?
Yes.
Okay. Saurabh, I guess I'll talk to you later on after the meeting if you have time to check those permissions. But that only proves my point that permissions are really important. Actually, like I said, 90% of the project are permissions. So Ivancho, if you can maybe share your screen, let's see what the error is.
Yes. Let me just. Okay. Can you see my screen?
It's coming up, not yet.
Okay.
Okay, now you can see your screen.
Right. I did it.
Okay, installation error, input string were not in correct format. Could not store data sources, packet type is integer. Okay, click OK.
Okay.
So that's not something that is common. Let me tell you, everybody, that's not something that is common. We'll try to debug it quickly. If not, I'll only work with Ivancho later on. But click OK, and then you will go to deploy page. Let me see which database have you selected. Okay, SQL demo database. Which one is this? 17, the same thing as I had?
Yes.
Same thing as I had. Okay. Okay, so we have a situation here where everybody's using the same application version, and we're connecting to the same data source. Now, if for me that went through, and only for Ivancho it didn't go through, I'm guessing that it went through for the majority of people here. That means something is up with something on his computer, right? We have a perfect example here where it's working for, I don't know, five people. And then for somebody.
For me also, I think, it's still loading, like there's no other notification after run.
Yeah, if it's still loading, if it says something on the right-hand side, so checking on the checking framework module or checking metadata. So Rakesh, on which step are you on right now?
Yeah, just the first step, checking framework module started.
Yeah. So it takes a while, right? It will for you. It will take longer, as we have seen the same thing that when you have added the data source, it took longer. And like I said, we're again on the connections between the servers. So it might take longer. It also deploying the framework. It really depends on the. If you're doing on a really good computer that I have over here, it will be faster. If you're on your laptop and you have some other applications running and the RAM is really low, right? It will take a little bit longer. So this is, specific to each one probably. Ivancha, I'll check that later on with you. It's not something that we can solve right now, but we'll check what the issue is. Like I said, I've been doing this for many years now, and this is a uncommon error, and we'll just have a look at what it is. It's usually something small, but we'll have a look.
Okay, perfect. For me.
Okay, if I return to my screen, since we only have a couple of minutes left. Okay, if you can see my screen, just let me know.
We can.
Okay.
I can.
Okay, perfect. So you see, I already went through a couple of steps. I'm on the deploy all. So if this gives you, if this is something that is not really full of information, you can always switch to log page from the installation to log, which will tell you exactly what is going on at the moment. Okay. At the moment, I'm deploying analysis database, and this is the last part of deploy. Now, what deploy is, Mladen already told you, but we'll go through that again at the beginning of tomorrow's session. And deploy is done. It's completed in 2 minutes, 8 seconds. And now the last part, process instance, is starting, at least for me. I'm not sure if it's the same for you. It will be also interesting to see here, because we're all connecting to the same database. If we would get a timeout or a deadlock or anything. So this could happen. Just mind you that if you have a deadlock, that everybody is accessing the same table at the same time, we could hit an error here. Okay. Yeah, I'm already loading the information. I actually have 2 databases here. So for some of you, you could already be done. Good. So that concludes today's session.